call this meeting to number 23 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using their Zoom application. The proceeding will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today's meeting is also taking place on Zoom webinar format. Webinars are for public committee meetings and are available only to members, their staff, and witnesses. Members may have remarked that the entry of the meeting was much more quicker and that they immediately entered as an active participant. All functionalities for active participants remain the same. Staff will be non-active participants only and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendations from health authorities to remain healthy and safe, all those attending the meeting in person are to maintain 2 meters of physical distance apart, must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it is highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, including when seated. Must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the provided hand sanitizer at the room entrance. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for their cooperation. For those participating virtually, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. With the latest Zoom version, you may now speak in the language of your choice without the need to select the corresponding language channel. You will also notice that the platform's raise hand feature is now in a more easily accessible location on the main toolbar should you need to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on video conference, please click the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verification Officer. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. With regard to the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our best to maintain a consolidated order of speaking of all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses for today. We've got Minister Rodriguez, the House Leader, and along with Minister Rodriguez, we've got Mr. Alan Sutherland, Assistant Secretary to the Cabinet. And then we've got Mr. Donald Booth, Director of Strategic Policy and Canadian Secretary to the Queen. Welcome to the committee. We will allow the Minister opening statements for about 10 minutes, and that will be preceded by probably 2 rounds of questions. Just so the whole committee is aware, the Minister will be here for the first part of the meeting for 1 hour, and then the officials will stay behind that are accompanying him for the second hour for further questioning. And I also want to take time to welcome some of our new members here today. Welcome back, Mr. Nader. And I see that we have Mr. Farragotis again with us here today. And Mr. Kent, welcome to the committee. I know that there was an official change made, so you and Mr. Nader will be our new permanent members of the committee, and I think the committee is looking forward. I myself am definitely looking forward to working with all of you. So, Minister, please go ahead with your opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll only take about 5 minutes so we can have more direct exchange. Alors, bonjour à tous. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm pleased to be with you virtually as you conduct your work on the issue of prorogation. This is important work. It's very important work. Back in the 2000 election, our party promised a new role for Parliament to examine this issue. As you may remember, the previous government had invoked prorogation on multiple occasions without ever explaining to Parliament why it had done so. So we promised to change the standing orders, and we did in 2017. And actually, many of you were there at the time. So the new standing order states that soon after Parliament resumes sitting following prorogation, the government must submit a document outlining the reasons for the prorogation. And once that happens, well, this document must immediately be referred to PROC. And this is exactly what happened, Madam Chair, for the first time in our history. The government has submitted an extensive report on the matter, and I'm here to speak to you about the report and answer all your questions. So in other words, we're following through on our promise. We're being transparent, open in explaining our reasons for last year's prorogation. Alors, regardons.
So let's review what happened last year. In December of 2019, following the election, our government came forward with a forward-looking throne speech, but that it was a throne speech that reflected what was happening at the time, and it reflected our agenda. There was no pandemic at the time, but then the pandemic came on, and everything changed. It changed our priorities. It changed the items that the government had to put at the top of its agenda. We had to be reducing the risk of Canadians contracting COVID-19. It also meant unprecedented measures to support the financial health of Canadians and their employers. We had to make sure they could pay their bills because life was going on, and we had to be able to help workers and our guardian angels, health workers, and we had to do it together. Just remember all the sittings where together we passed bills that would help Canadians.
It was clear that members of Parliament would be facing a new and much different landscape when the House of Commons returned in the fall. And as the Prime Minister said in August when he announced the prorogation, Canada was at a crossroads. This was a time to protect Canadians, rebuild the economy, build a more resilient Canada that is healthier, safer, greener, more competitive. And this would require a reset, a new plan. So we committed to coming forward in Parliament with a new throne speech to reflect the extraordinary times we found ourselves in. And just as important, members of Parliament would be given a chance to vote on this plan. That was fundamental. And the Prime Minister was very clear in August when he made the announcement. You'll remember that. And here's some of the things he said, and I'll quote him directly. We are proroguing Parliament to bring it back on exactly the same week it was supposed to come back anyway and force a confidence vote. We're taking a moment to recognize that the throne speech we delivered 8 months ago had no mention of COVID-19, had no conception of the reality we find ourselves in right now. We need to reset the approach of this government for our recovery to build back better. And those are big, important decisions. And we need to present that to Parliament and gain the confidence of Parliament to move forward on this very ambitious plan. So colleagues, this is exactly what happened.
Parliament returned for a second session with a new throne speech that outlined a clear roadmap that responded to the pandemic, and the House voted. The House supported the throne speech, and this was very important. And as promised, since then, our government has stayed focused on our work to tackle the pandemic, to support Canadians. We announced a transition from the Canada Emergency Response Benefit to a more flexible, accessible EI system to help businesses. We announced a new Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy, and we extended it to June 2021. And as the world looked towards the day when COVID-19 vaccines would be developed, we continued with the work that had begun many months earlier. And by September, as we have said, we will have enough doses for all Canadians who want to be vaccinated.
Steps that have been taken, these are the actions of a government that put COVID-19 at the top of its agenda. So the House was prorogued last year for one reason, to come forward with a new plan to confront the biggest health and economic crisis of our time. That's it. So now I'm happy to answer your question. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Also, just to remind all of the members that the government House leaders' opening remarks were also circulated to everyone in case you want to refer to them while you ask questions. I believe we're going to begin with 6 minutes for Mr. Deltel. Mr. Deltel, welcome to the committee. Thank you for subbing in today. Go ahead, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madame Chair. C'est un vrai plaisir pour moi.
It truly is a pleasure to be able to sit at the table this morning, and I'd like to welcome the Minister responsible for Quebec and the Government House Leader. Madam Chair, the Minister forgot two very important points in his opening remarks. He forgot to say that everything that the Prime Minister said in his throne speech, he could have said through a statement to the House of Commons. Why? Because there was nothing new that deserved a prorogation and a new throne speech, rather. The government, as it said itself, was already working to resolve the issues related to the pandemic, so there was no reason to prorogue. He could have made a statement to the House. Now, why didn't he do that? Well, let's just remember, Madam Chair, what was happening. On the 19th of August, the Committee on Ethics that was looking into the WE scandal was supposed to listening to the Speaker's spotlight. Now, they were responsible for contracts with We Charity and with the personal family of the Prime Minister. The representative was supposed to appear on the 19th, and just by coincidence, it was on the 18th that there was a decision to dissolve Parliament. Why? Well, Speaker Spotlight said that they had been in discussions with the Prime Minister's family, and I'd like to know if the minister was aware of the discussions between the Speaker Spotlight and the family of the Prime Minister. Madam Chair, you won't be surprised to learn that I am not in agreement with the premise of what my colleague is saying. I do welcome him here to the committee. It's a pleasure to see him. But I said earlier, and the Prime Minister said at the time, that all of government, not just the political side of the government, all government, public servants, had to focus on the pandemic. It was the greatest public health crisis since the Spanish flu. It was the greatest economic crisis in about 100 years. And so we had to do that. Now, we all belong to different parties. Obviously, we read events differently. Well, my question is a little more specific than that, Minister. I'm asking if you were aware of the discussions between Speaker Spotlight and Trudeau's family, yes or no? Well, Madam Chair, my colleague from the opposition is asking me specific questions on items I have no idea of. Well, if you weren't aware then, should the Prime Minister be appearing before this committee if you're not able to speak to this? Well, I'm very pleased to be here today, Mr. Deltel, on behalf of the government. I'm speaking on behalf of the government. I'm speaking on behalf of all our colleagues. I'm the one who was able to table the report in the House. I'm sure you read it. And that's the reason why I'm here today, to listen to your questions. Well, if you're speaking on behalf of the government, I'm here to speak on prorogation. And Mr. Deltel, if you're asking me to speak to the prorogation report, I expect questions on that. Well, the reason there was prorogation was because Speaker Spotlight was supposed to testify on the 19th. And I'd like to know if the Prime Minister had any influence over these decisions and discussions. Well, Madam Chair, we have two different visions. Well, to help you answer, you've spoken about transparency. Are you willing to table before this committee all exchanges that took place between the Prime Minister's office and anyone else on prorogation. Are you willing to table those documents? The committee can ask for whatever it wants. Then I'm asking you if you're open to that. Mr. Deltel, this isn't a court. We're speaking amongst colleagues. And I think we should be speaking about prorogation. Yes, and you're not able to tell me what the Prime Minister's influence was. I'm helping you think about this, and I'm asking you to table all documents, all memos, emails, texts between your office and the Prime Minister's office on prorogation. Are you willing to go through that transparency exercise, yes or no? Mr. Deltel, there's an enormous amount of work that has been done by this committee. Yes or no, says Mr. Deltel. Many of your colleagues have done a considerable amount of work. They've heard from experts, academics, and that is what has led up to my presence here today to speak about prorogation. Canadians want to know what the Prime Minister's role was in the decision on prorogation. He announced it, but what led to it? That's what we want answers on. And perhaps it could help you, and what could help Canadians would be if you were to table all emails, texts, and anything else that took place between your office and the Prime Minister's office. Are you willing to be that transparent, yes or no? Mr. Deltel, you're talking about what could help Canadians understand why we prorogued? Well, I've just explained this to you. So you're saying no? Is that what you're saying? You're not willing to table these documents? Mr. Deltel, I've explained to you the reasoning behind the government's decision, and I'm speaking on behalf of the government. I tabled the report in the House on behalf of the government, and I think it's a very serious document. And Mr. Deltel, this has never happened before in history. Your own government prorogued with no reason whatsoever more than once.
Rodriguez, that's all the time we have. Monsieur Lauzon, 6 minutes, please.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Mr. Rodriguez for his speech. From my point of view, Mr. Rodriguez, prorogation is proroguing government, rather, is a way of resetting the agenda, getting a fresh start, and that's how it was announced. Now, priorities changed because of the pandemic. We had to start over in order to be able to focus on our new priorities and respond to the needs of Canadians. I mean, I only need to think of when you had to send the Canadian Armed Forces into long-term healthcare homes in the spring. We had to help patients. These patients were not being nourished properly. Their beds were dirty. There were patients on the floor. Seniors were being found dead in their beds. And so the Canadian Army had to go in and help deal with this. So we saw how important a role the federal government had to play during this crisis. And it was so important to set these health standards for people who were suffering and to bring in health measures. Now, there are some politicians today who are trying to say that just with some money, anything can be dealt with, who are saying that we should be thinking of other priorities. They're trying to distract us. But we saw how important prorogation was. COVID-19 is responsible for the losses of thousands of Canadians. That's our families. And no one will ever forget the inhumane conditions that we found some of these people dying in. And we hope that this will never happen again. That's what we've been working on. Can the government House Leader tell us how prorogation allowed the government to work on several important priorities for Canadians?
Je vous remercie, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lauzon. I'd like to thank you for all the work that you have done as Parliamentary Secretary for our seniors throughout the country. That is such an important role, and you have shone in that role. The pandemic affected everyone, and it affected our seniors more than anyone else. And what happened is absolutely unacceptable. We saw that our seniors were much more vulnerable than we thought. We saw that our social safety net was not capturing all these people, that there were too many holes in that safety net. Too many people were falling through it. And the number of deaths amongst seniors was so very sad. And so we wanted to help in collaboration with the provinces. We collaborated with Quebec and all the provinces. We saw that we had to do a reset, as you said. We had to press the start button again. Mr. Lauzon, remember that first throne speech? We had just come out of an election campaign. And who would have thought at the time that a little while later we'd be talking about an economic crisis, about outbreaks, rapid tests, the pandemic, masks, hand disinfectant, salary subsidies? No one thought of that. And as best we could, we moved with unfolding events. And all of us did this in collaboration. I see Mr. Terrien here, Mr. Julien helped, I see Mr. Deltel. We were all doing this together. Why? Because it wasn't just the responsibility of the government to help support Canadians. It was the responsibility of all parliamentarians. We were all elected by Canadians. And that's why I thank once again all my colleagues from the various parties for collaborating, because this helped us bring in a series of bills that allowed us to help Canadians. At the end of the summer, we realized there was a second wave coming. It was no longer a question of whether or not there would be a second wave. It was a question of what the impact of that second wave would be and what we were going to do, what kind of tools we were going to use in order to face this second wave. And it's at that time that we decided as a government to press the pause button and reset, not just as the government, not just for a government, but for all of government, all public servants. Yes, that's a very good point. We saw how vulnerable seniors were, and we saw the steps that the government took after prorogation. The first pillar of the fall 2020 throne speech was to protect Canadians from COVID-19. In the context of a minority government, and it's very important to respect democracy, yes, but it's very important also to remember how serious this pandemic was. We needed to know that a majority of Parliament would support that plan, and that's what happened. So prorogation allowed us to come forward with a plan to protect Canadians. Can the leader tell us how important prorogation was in setting up a plan that would bring in public health measures that would be supported by a majority of parliamentarians, not just Liberals? Well, that's a very good question, because it was absolutely essential.
All the time we have, so
Madam
hopefully
Speaker,
you can get that in.
That was a very good question.
It was a very good question. But Monsieur Terrien is next.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to welcome Minister Rodriguez. I'm very pleased to see you again, and I'd also like to welcome my colleague, Mr. Deltel. We work a lot together. It's always a pleasure. I don't have much time, so I'm going to go forward with some very clear questions. So prorogation, it's being said, was for a reset because of the pandemic. So my question to Mr. Pablo Rodriguez is this. When start being linked up with COVID? Well, thank you, Mr. Terrien. And I'd just like to say that we started adapting as soon as there was the first outbreak. As you yourself, we saw what was happening in the rest of the world. We started working. We started working with the opposition. But what was truly needed was a clear direction, a clear statement of where we were going. No, Mr. Rodriguez, I'm simply asking you, when were you bringing in policies, rather, linked to the pandemic? Well, as soon as we were bringing in bills, I would say March, we were speaking with each other every day, Mr. Terrien. Thank you. In that case, why didn't you prorogue in March? If you're saying that if you were saying that the prorogation at the end of the summer was important because of the pandemic, perhaps we should have done that in March because that's when you started bringing in policies. Well, we made all kinds of decisions. Remember when we had to shut down Parliament temporarily, and when we had that COVID committee of the whole to respond to these issues. Mr. Terrien, there are all kinds of questions that could be asked of us, perhaps with hindsight. Well, are you saying then that in March there should have been a prorogation? Well, I could even say there shouldn't have been a pandemic, Mr. Terrien. Mr. Terrien, you're asking me what would have been better 8 months ago? Listen, you can push this logic only so far, but thanks to you, to Mr. Deltel, to Mr. Julian, we had to act together, and that's what we did. So then we should have prorogued in March. If everything is so linked up to the pandemic, actually, we could have prorogued in March. So what happened on the 17th of August then? What was so important? On August 17th? Well, it's not that that was a specifically special day. There were many ongoing discussions. Mr. Rodriguez, you're a very intelligent, informed man, and I'm sure you prepared well to come before this committee. So what was so important about August 17th? Your Minister of Finance had resigned, and you shut down Parliament on August 18th. So why did you do that on August 18th? Well, we were debating COVID, Mr. Terrien. We were debating many things. No. I'm asking you a very specific question. Listen, at one point we had to decide to prorogue. Could it have been a week before, a week after, perhaps? Yes, but I'm going to ask you my question again. On the 17th of August, the Minister of Finance resigned. What happened on the 18th? What happened in Parliament? What were we working on? Please, give me a simple answer. Well, in Parliament, we were working on COVID. No, we were looking into We Charity. All the committees were looking into We Charity. And when you closed down Parliament, you were closing down that debate on the We Charity. Experts told us that prorogation was to reset, was to start over. However, in March, you started adapting your policies to the pandemic, so there was nothing new. Second, we were told by you that we couldn't shut down Parliament, stop Parliament from debating for too long, so it wasn't going to last long. Now, we were told by experts that Parliament is necessary if there's going to be a reset. But you did this on August 18th. It would have been just as logical to prorogue on September 18th. So why did you not do it on September 18th rather than August 18th? So you're saying you want us to be able to write a throne speech in 2 or 3 days? Listen, it's very simple to rewrite a throne speech. I mean, all you did was take a 2019 throne speech, throw a few things in related to the pandemic, and read it. Listen, Mr. Terrien, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this because I don't at all agree with your premise, and that's fine. Listen, Mr. Rodriguez, governing is also looking ahead and being able to decide things in advance. We could have come back on September 18th, and then you could have prorogued. And prorogue for as short a time as possible so we could do our work. So why didn't you wait until September 18th for us to be able to continue to work in committees on the We Charity? Mr. Terrien, Parliament did its work, was doing excellent work, and we did it together to bring forward bills. Just remember all the committees we set up in June and July to do this. We did this so that the opposition would be able to put the most questions possible to us. So there were many, many opportunities to ask questions, and that's absolutely fundamental because your role is so essential. Now, does there have to be continuity? Of course. The pandemic continued. The pandemic didn't take a break. It continued, and so we did too. Why did you choose August 18th? Well, you have to pick a date. It could have been before, could have been after. Well, listen, what you're saying it doesn't matter, but there was something else underlying this, and you don't want to talk about it. This doesn't work.
Blakey for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. You've said a few times now that the prorogation was necessary so that the government could work on the speech. So I'm just wondering, how many people were all working on this speech? And, what do you think government would, what jobs would government have been doing if Parliament was sitting that it didn't do during prorogation? Because what I'm hearing is that proroguing meant that the government was off the hook for all sorts of work that otherwise would have kept it so busy that it couldn't have written a half-hour speech. So what were the things that government wasn't doing while prorogation was in effect, such that you were able to commit so much time and resources to this apparently momentous speech?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Blakey, and also thank you for the work for your party in this crisis, because we were able, and as I said to Mr. Terrien and Mr. Deltel, to work together to help Canadians, and that included all of you guys. We needed to send a clear message that the government was fully concentrating all its efforts on this, clear message to the population, clear message to all the public servants. We needed that reset so we can focus, so we could consult, because there's been also a lot of consultation, and that takes time. It doesn't take 3 days.
Indeed, it does. So what is the work that your government did not perform that it otherwise would have done if there had been no prorogation? Because what you're telling me is that prorogation lets you off the hook from certain kinds of work in order to focus on a speech from the throne. So what work was it that you weren't doing as a result of prorogation that gave you so much more time that you're telling us was needed in order to get a speech from the throne right? What were you not doing during prorogation that you would have been doing if the House had been sitting? And incidentally, it was only supposed to sit for 1 day out of that entire period that it was prorogued. So was it just during the sitting day that you guys were working on the speech from the throne and you really needed that time, or were there other days that you weren't doing things that you would have been doing
Mr.
otherwise?
Blakey, you know that a speech from the throne takes time. It takes time because you're not there sitting by yourself in a room, drafting a few notes here. Consult. You go out, you consult. People are on the ground, experts from the business sector, from the social sector.
So during the pandemic response, during the pandemic response, while Parliament was sitting, you weren't consulting with people, because you're telling me you only had time to consult if Parliament's prorogued.
It amplifies
that civic consultation and Parliament sitting are incompatible for your government. Have I got that right?
It amplifies the effort. It puts a focus on what we're doing. It sends a clear message to public servants, to all of us, to everyone, that we're really, really concentrating on that. Through all the discussions also with the provinces, you know what? There's no recipe to manage a crisis, Mr. Blakey. You know that. Like when we got there, who knew about COVID-19? No one.
So in what ways was Parliament distracting you from consulting with civil society on the direction that we should be taking? Like what was the burden you were relieved of in order to be able to focus more on consulting with Canadians, which apparently you hadn't been doing much of prior to prorogation, at least not effectively, which is why you needed the time off from Parliament, if I understand you correctly.
I wouldn't call it distraction, because the work that Parliament does and committee does and you guys in the opposition do is fundamental. So, but what we wanted... So
could we not have continued doing that work while your government consulted?
We did everything we could. Listen, we've been going on for months, sitting down with the opposition, putting, piece here and piece there. I think we needed a clear vision, something more broad, based on consultation, something very, very clear, a path to follow, because again, none of us is an expert in managing a crisis of that size, of a pandemic.
But did it make sense to take that time while there was a looming deadline for the expiration of CERB and millions of Canadians wondering what was going to happen to their household income? looking to Parliament to be hammering out a solution, and instead seeing that the work of Parliament had stopped in that regard? I mean, couldn't the timing of this have been different? And if your government really felt the need to have a confidence, an expression of confidence by the House, I mean, speech from the throne is not the only tool to do that. I mean, you know, the opposition have been calling for a budget for some time by then, but also there's the option for your government at any time to introduce a motion to the effect of whether or not the House has confidence in the government or not. You don't need a speech from the throne to do it. You don't need a budget to do it. A simple motion would have been good enough. It would have allowed the work of Parliament to continue through the weeks between August 18th and when Parliament went back. I mean, why not those options? Why not test the confidence of the House with a simple motion and then wait for the consultative effort until after we had done right by Canadians and made it clear what would happen on the day that the CERB program expired, instead of leaving it till the 11th hour, which caused a lot of unneeded stress and anxiety for many Canadian families in very difficult positions.
I think, Mr. Blakey, that getting the confidence of the House on this broad, very detailed program was sending a clear message, and I think that was necessary. And I think that it was definitely the right thing to do.
I just have to disagree that the speech from the throne provided a detailed program. Most of it was a rehash of things we had heard before. The details Canadians were really interested in were the details of what had happened with the We Charity scandal, particularly students.
Thank you, Mr. Blakey. That's all the time you have. Mr. Nader, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for joining us. I'm curious, did the government or the Liberal Party undertake any public opinion research informing the decision to prorogue, polling, focus groups, anything of that nature?
I couldn't tell you that. I can tell you that there was clear indications that we really had to focus and reset and make sure that we would build this very comprehensive and detailed plan to move forward, which we did. And also, as I said to Mr. Blakey, try to get the confidence of the House to move forward.
Would you be able to undertake to go back to PCO or to the Liberal Party and confirm whether or not there was research undertaken, public opinion research, and if so, if you could share that with our committee? You ask
the chair, and you guys make decisions. You're a committee, so I've been sitting on committees, and your work is super important. So I'm not how do you say, preventing you from doing that. I'm here to answer your question.
Okay. On what date did you become aware that the House would be prorogued?
Exact date, I don't know. We had discussions about the second wave that was coming, because at a certain point in time, it was not anymore about having or not a second wave. It was how hard it was going to hit us, and how all our energy had to be focused on that second wave, preventing as much as possible, but also adapting it and fighting it.
So we don't have an exact date, but was it a couple days before? Was it a couple weeks before? When did those conversations start?
Exactly. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Those are, discussions that go back and forth. But the main discussions were how do we focus on this? How do we send a clear message to public servants, to the population, to the provinces, that we have to really, really focus our efforts in fighting this huge tragedy, huge crisis that is COVID-19.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I often go off script myself, so I don't always read things word for word. But I noticed a small change in your speaking notes. When you spoke today, you said it was for the one reason that we prorogued was to come back to the House with a new plan. It doesn't say that in your speaking notes. So can you confirm that there was one and only reason for proroguing was that you come back to the House?
I changed it this morning when I woke up. It just sound, and we do that all the time, right? We change our notes, and because for me it was clear, so I just wanted to make it clear. I mean, there's never been a doubt in my mind that that was a reason. COVID-19 is a big enough reason for that.
Yeah, and I'm not denying that we all go off script, much to the chagrin of our staff sometimes. But I just wanted to confirm that's the only reason in your mind was to come back with the plan. But I want to go a little bit to committees. Your government often says committees are independent. They don't take orders from the center, if you will. But when after prorogation, what we saw was a rather concerted effort on multiple committees to filibuster the committees, to block motions from coming forward, to suspend meetings for days on end. I'm just curious. Do you stand by your decision that none of that was coordinated and it was all entirely independently done by individual committees?
Yes.
So you're confirming that there was no coordination, no communication with committee members on any of these committees, from the House Leader's office, from the Whip's office, or from Liberal Party operatives?
Mr. Nader, I had the privilege to be in a position for 7 years. I was trying to do your job as best as I could. Mr. Lukinski was there, and some of you were there at the time. And I knew then, and I know today, how important it is to keep the independence of those committees, and we respect that. And I'm sure you do too on your side. I mean, it's fundamental.
Yeah, and certainly it is a privilege to serve in opposition, and I do hope you get an opportunity to serve in opposition.
I've been there
again.
Before.
It's quite an honor. So I just want to go back to this. So there were no emails, no memos, no communication between House Leader Whip's office, Liberal Party operatives, and members of the committee.
Well, I'm sure there's communications, regular communications between members of a caucus. I'm sure you do the same thing. But if we're there to direct committees, no, the committees are master of their own destiny, if that's the right expression, and they do their job and they do it well, and it's fundamental in our democracy.
In the Liberal Party 2015 platform, it says fairly clearly, we will not resort to legislative tricks to avoid scrutiny. Stephen Harper has used prorogation to avoid difficult political circumstances. Would you not agree that the WE scandal was a very difficult political situation for your government and your party?
Well, you're trying to make a link between that and the prorogation, and as I explained before, there isn't.
But would you not agree that
COVID-19 is in itself is important enough to prorogue and reset?
With the helpful benefit of a political situation there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nader. Mr. Turnbull, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for being here. It's a pleasure to see you, and I really appreciate all your collaborative leadership throughout this pandemic. Look, I know, there's been some implications of other committee members have made here, but I think you said in your opening remarks that no one really could have predicted the biggest health and economic crisis of our time. I know in that first throne speech, there was no mention of all kinds of things that appeared in the throne speech, the renewed one that we got more recently. So I guess one question I have is, like, in terms of the significant impact and context shift that we saw during COVID-19. Could you highlight one or two aspects of that? I think what you've said is that, the contextual shift really required a reevaluation of the government's priorities. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but maybe you could talk about those big impacts.
Well, it was huge, I would say, and I would say for all of us, think just the fact that we're here on a screen, we can't meet in person, we can't go to the parliament. I mean, it's everything changed, Mr. Turnbull, as you say, and I'm sure all colleagues agree on that. In the first throne speech, that was, it was really looking forward and being innovative and looking to the future, but it was based on the present. It was based on the situation we're in. So no word of testing, vaccination, relaunching the economy, massive loss of jobs, closing the borders. That didn't exist. So we needed to adapt. And honestly, we did the best we could for a while. And again, I'm turning to Mr. Deltel and Mr. Terrien and Mr. Julian for the NDP. I mean, we sat together and we were able to work for Canadians. But we got to a moment where it was clear that we were heading into a second wave. We didn't know how big it was going to be. It's huge. But we needed to reset, and this is what we did.
Yeah, thank you for that. So it's as if there was a moment of crisis, all hands on deck. Would you say it's fair to say that we were full out working as effectively as possible for a period of time, and that between the first and second wave, there was a moment where it seemed like a good time to sort of reflect and ask ourselves, are we on the right path? Is that would you say that's true?
You're absolutely right. And I cherish those few weeks that we had in the summer when things seemed more positive, and there was sun, we could go outside, but at the same time, we knew that things were about to change, and this second wave was going to hit us. And we saw at that moment in other countries that they were being hit by that second wave. At the same time, we were heading into the fall and the winter, which meant schools being back, people being inside. So more challenges, more dangers for contamination. So, and we had been working since day one. Without that clear plan, we have been doing the best we could. And this is collectively, I'm looking at all the parties, but we needed that frame, that big plan. And this is what we went to get with the throne speech.
Thank you. And if I could also clarify, there's several other members have made comments about, rewriting a speech should only take 30 minutes. It's very easy to rewrite a throne speech. I, seem to recall a very significant, worthwhile consultation process that happened leading into the throne speech. I'm a new member of parliament. I don't know if that's a regular occurrence, but from what I hear from other members, you don't usually do that big of a consultation process leading into a throne speech. Do you want to speak to that, Mr. Rodriguez, in terms of the process?
Absolutely. Any throne speech will take time. But a throne speech that is the master plan to fight a pandemic never seen since the Spanish flu, doubled with this recession, of course you will need time. Of course you will consult. Of course you need to talk to experts. Who am I to say this is what we have to do to end the pandemic or to relaunch the economy? I have my own ideas, and we consult. We consult people from everywhere, experts, and this led us to this required some time to draft the speech, and this led us to the second throne speech.
Thank you, Minister. Next, we've got Mr. Terrien. You have 2.5 minutes, Mr. Terrien, 2.5.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Alors, question simple, on parle.
Thank you very much. This is a simple question. We're talking about CERB, virtual sittings, subsidies, vaccines. So when did you start talking about all that, Mr. Rodriguez? Well, during the first phase, I would say, during the first phase. Well, when was that? Well, collectively, when we all became aware of this, it would be in March, but of course things were happening before then. All right, so you're saying the month of March. And so if prorogation then was based on the pandemic, it should have happened in March. Well, in March, we had to shut down Parliament for now. Yes, I understand that. But given the reasons you've given for prorogation, that should have been done in March. For all those purposes, vaccines, CERB, everything. But Mr. Terrien, we didn't know when Parliament was going to come back. Yes, but you can't say that because it was because of pandemic-related factors that you prorogued, because this happened in March. I'm sorry, don't put words in my mouth, Mr. Terrien. What I said was that we saw that there was a second wave coming. We didn't know how long it would be, what it would entail, so we really wanted to focus the government's efforts on that. But you were mentioning CERB and virtual sittings. You're actually misleading the committee because that was already happening. Now, let's come back to the 17th and 18th of August. You said it was a date like any other, but Mr. Rodriguez, that answer is very worrisome. When you're a government house leader, that is even more worrisome because I know that you're very intelligent and that you always choose your words wisely. Mr. Morneau was Minister of Finance at the time. Why did he resign on August 17th? Well, I don't remember exactly what his words were, but I could... Seriously, you don't know what his words were? What I'm saying is that he had his reasons. Mr. Terrien, I don't understand the connection you're trying to draw here. Was he involved in the We Charity affair or not? Well, the committees were discussing that, yes, but I'm asking you the question. His name came up in committee sittings. Well, the opposition raised his name. Yes, of course the opposition raised his name. Why? Well, Mr. Terrien, Mr. Rodriguez, rather. On the 17th, the minister resigned. On the 18th, you prorogued. You stopped all committee work looking into the We Charity. For whose sake? I mean, who was going to be in hot water at the time? It was your prime minister, actually. You had to save your prime minister. That's what you did. I absolutely disagree.
Blakey, you have 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You've said a few times that, we should believe that the consultation requirements for the speech from the throne were sufficient reason in order to accept that the government prorogued Parliament when it did, even though there were several investigations into the We Charity scandal going on at the time, even though it followed right on the heels of the resignation of the finance minister, apparently as a result of the same scandal. And even though there was still a lot of work yet to be done on how to replace CERB with another income support program to not leave millions of Canadian families out in the cold. But this isn't, the question isn't whether consultation is required when you're doing a speech like that. The question is whether government has resources to both consult and continue to do the job of the government. And what I'm hearing is that you don't believe that the government could continue to do the job of the government, including being accountable to Parliament, and consult adequately to prepare a speech from the throne. And I find that incredible, because it seems to me that government ought to continuously be consulting on important initiatives, even as it runs the country and is responsible to Parliament. So what I can't fathom is how your government thinks it doesn't have the resources to consult with people about a meaningful speech from the throne while continuing to do the job of running the nation, including being accountable to Parliament. Why do you think your government can't pull off being consultative and accountable to Parliament at the same time?
Well, with all respect, Mr. Blakey, you're coming back to the same question you asked twice. So this is the third time, and I did answer.
I haven't got a good answer yet. I continue to give
you
opportunities to impress.
I'm sorry if you don't like my answer. I'm doing my best.
And you continue to disappoint.
To give you a good answer. But the thing is that we needed that plan, and I said it in both languages before. We went as far as we could. We did everything we could to try to manage this crisis, project by project, bill by bill, this and that. We needed a frame, like a master frame that would lead us to this fight, the second wave, and this is what we did.
And what I'm saying is that you had a duty to prepare that plan if you really felt that that's what was needed, while engaging with parliamentarians on the question of how to replace CERB. So it wasn't done at the last minute, as it ultimately was. And there have been issues with some of the programs that were designed and agreed to there that we might have been able to foresee and prevent had we had parliamentary time to study them. And you had a duty to prepare that framework, even while answering important questions about how you guys really let down a lot of students in the summer because you didn't give them access to CERB. You gave them access to a reduced emergency benefit on the pretense that there was going to be a job program for them that never came to be because people were playing footsie under the table with folks at We Charity. And it's students that bore the real price of that because they didn't get the job program that was promised to them to make up for the fact that they didn't get the same income replacement that they would have got on CERB.
We have Mr. Lukiski for 5 minutes, please. Mr. Lukiski.
Thank you, Chair and Ministers. Good to see you again. Minister, you and I go back a long ways.
Yep,
we were both elected in 2004. We've been here ever since, except you took a 4-year hiatus in 2011, but it's good to see you back here again. So I'm going to speak very honestly and candidly with you, Minister, and I hope you reciprocate. It is clear to everyone in this committee, and I know it's clear to you as well, there was only one reason for prorogation being called in early August, and that was to shut down committees who were investigating the We Charity scandal. That was the singular reason for doing so. And every academic that has come before this committee, and we have had several, admits that was the reason. They all agree to that. They all agree in addition, that prorogation was not necessary. If it was prorogation that was necessary, it could have been called much later, even literally days before Parliament resumed. So the prorogation excuse that you're offering, Minister, is weak. And I know most Canadians who are paying any attention to this understand that fundamentally. One of our academics went as far to say is that the Prime Minister's decision to prorogue Parliament was an abuse of power. And I agree with that as well. Now, prorogation is a tool. The Prime Minister chose to use it. That was his decision. That was his prerogative. But I won't go back to what Mr. Nader, my colleague, was saying about the extension of prorogation and one of the ancillary effects of prorogation, and that is the impact it had upon committees. Because since your Parliament shut down committees through prorogation, it took it one step further when Parliament and committees were reconstituted in mid-September. And that is Liberals on both the Ethics and Finance Committee started filibustering. Now, if you've stated, Minister, on the record before this committee that that was independent of any decisions from your office, the Whip's office, or the PMO, that parliamentarians themselves in those committees made those decisions. Listen, I've been around a long time. I filibustered myself on many occasions, and you know that. You were on the same committee as I when I went on for about 8.5 hours. And
you filibustered my bill.
And you know as well as I do, Minister, that that filibustering doesn't just occur when committee members wake up one morning and say, hey, you know something? Let's filibuster today. They are instructed to do so. There are consultations, there are meetings between the Whip's office and committee members, and they are given a game plan and they follow it. So, Minister, I don't expect you to admit that you instructed or the Whip's office instructed parliamentarians to filibuster, but can you at least show some modicum of honesty and tell us exactly what discussions were held between committee members, your office, the Whip's office, and the PMO prior to the filibustering of those two committees?
Hello, Mr. Lipinski. It's good to see you, by the way. And you did filibuster a lot at the time. And if you remember, you filibustered my bill. I had a private bill on Kyoto, and you did speak, I think, for 2 hours during that meeting, and you were pretty good at it. That being said, of course, you will not be surprised that I disagree with your comments, because you see it one way and I see it the other way. I'm part of that government.
Simple question, and you know, Mr. You are compelled, Minister, you are compelled, and I know you know this, I don't have to lecture you on this, to speak the truth at committees, particularly in your role as a minister. Are you saying, for the record, that there was no influence, no direction given, no suggestions given from anyone in your office, the Whip's office, or the PMO to committee members to engage in filibustering? Are you saying that on the record, sir?
Mr. Lukinski, you know very well that committees are independent. You sat on committee for years. I sat on committees for years. They're independent. So again, if I make it, you said a lot of things, but I'll be short. There's no recipe to manage a pandemic. We're doing our best. You are doing your best. All of us were doing our best. And we went as far as we could by adopting bills here and there, and we needed that master plan. This is
exactly answer my question about filibustering. If there was any direction given to committee members to filibuster, were the instructions given by someone either in your office or the Whip's office or the PMO to committee members to engage in filibusters of the Ethics and the Finance Committee?
Again,
yes or no?
It's again the same question, Mr. Lukinski. Committees are independent. I mean, we have very smart people on all sides sitting on those committees. They know what they have to do.
Thank you, Minister.
If you honestly think that's the truth, Minister, I feel very sorry for you.
Thank you. Next, we've got Ms. Pettypot-Taylor, and then we will have, we'll say goodbye to the Minister, and then we'll have the officials on for the remainder of the meeting. Ms. Pettypot-Taylor, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And before I ask a few questions, I just wanted, for the record, indicate that we also did have some academics that appeared before committee, and they were not all Some of them also indicated that they approved and they felt that it was very appropriate that we use prorogation, that it was an appropriate time when that was called for, specifically that we are dealing with a global pandemic, and that the pandemic is not just a public health crisis, but it really touches all parts of our society. So I think I wanted to make sure that that was clear on the record. Monsieur le Ministre, thank you so much for being with us today. It's always a pleasure to see you. I'm going to have a few basic questions to ask you, but questions that perhaps we as parliamentarians believe that are basic. But for Canadians that are watching PROC, and I'm sure that there's many people that are out there watching this committee work today, I thought it'd be good for the record just for people to understand the language that we use. And the reason why that I bring this up, in August and September and even in October, I met with my youth council in Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe. And I took it for granted that my youth council knew what prorogation was all about, the purpose of it, and even throne speeches. And then my staff person kind of winked at me and said, Jeanette, perhaps you could explain to people what the purpose of prorogation is and what are the steps that are taken when that occurs. So I guess a few questions that I have for you. First and foremost, could you just explain to Canadians the purpose of prorogation? Also, what does prorogation mean? And the steps that are taken when proroguing Parliament. So those are my three questions, and I'll give you my remaining time to answer them. How's that?
Thank you very much, Madame Petipa, and thank you for all the work you do, especially with all the caucus. It's really appreciated, especially during all these tough times. And I know it's difficult for all of us, for all caucus members in all different parties. And I want to thank you for what you're doing for all our colleagues. Basically, when you prorogue, Parliament is temporarily dissolved. It's been used in the past. But we thought that it's an important tool that you have to explain why it is used. And it's not what was done in the past. And Mr. Lukinski was there when Mr. Harper prorogued twice, and he prorogued for weeks, and there was no reason. I think it would have been important for Parliament at that moment to receive this type of explanation. Et c'est pourquoi nous, on a adapté, on a mis dans notre plateforme en 2015.
And that's why we said that any government using prorogation needs to table a report in government and in Parliament rather, and that's what I did as House Leader. That then is referred to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, and the government then will have an opportunity to explain the reasons for that prorogation, and that's what I'm doing here today on behalf of the government. So it's very important that this layer of transparency was added. It only strengthens democracy, because at times it may be necessary to prorogue Parliament. We've seen it in the past. Many governments of all stripes, have used prorogation. But just as importantly, Madame Petipa-Taylor, is that the House must be seized of the reasons and must understand the reasons for the decision that the government made. And that's why I'm here, to tell you that prorogation was absolutely necessary. We were facing the greatest crisis since the Spanish flu. We were facing the greatest economic recession since 1929. And all parties together had to have an opportunity to build, to find solutions. And we had to be able to focus all our efforts on tackling the pandemic. And at the time when we were working together, we didn't know that there would be a second wave. But we wanted to be able to focus government on that work. And that's what we did. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have 15 seconds left, so I will give up the floor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Exact. Thank you, Minister Rodriguez. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today. And I believe, Mr. Sutherland, you may have opening remarks as well.
I'm just going to thank all members. Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Thank you. Bye. Mr. Sutherland, Mr. Booth, you have opening remarks as well?
I do, Madam Chair.
Okay.
And thank you for that opening, and thank you for the invitation.
Please go ahead.
Thank you for the invitation to participate in the meeting. As you mentioned, I'm with Don Booth, who, as was mentioned earlier, is my Director of Policy and is the Canadian Secretary to the Queen. So he has one of the more interesting job titles and roles in the Canadian Public Service. We read with great interest, and there was some allusion during the first part of the meeting to the committee meeting of January 28th, which I found very interesting. I mean, you know, sometimes I feel that our democratic practices are less well understood than they should be. So it was really heartening to hear some very thoughtful reflections from your witnesses. Though I would note that given their quality, it's not really surprising that professors like Professor Brody, Professor Cyr, Lagacé, and Turnbull were very thoughtful on this subject. In their presentations, the professors laid down the fundamentals of the exercise of the royal prerogative as it is practiced in Canada. Such principles as the Prime Minister has the authority to advise the Governor General to prorogue Parliament, which is mentioned by several of the professors. Second principle, that under the principles of accountable government, the Governor General must act on this advice, which was mentioned most explicitly by Professor Brody, and that in the history of Canada, a Prime Minister's request to prorogue Parliament has never been denied, which I believe was mentioned by Professor Turnbull. During his presentation just now, Minister Rodriguez elaborated on the government's reasons for proroguing. He made reference to the the Prime Minister's August press conference and announcing prorogation. And I believe there was even a mention of the government's report, which is tabled in October, titled Report to Parliament, August 2020 Prorogation, COVID-19 Pandemic, which was an innovation. First time this sort of thing has been done. I think where Don and I can usefully build on the foundation of knowledge that's already been established is on the mechanics of proroguing. How does it happen within the system? We are also in a position to lay out some of the streams of work that were initiated within the system when prorogation occurs. That is, how does the public service respond to proroguing? On the how of proroguing, there are a number of steps. And so in brief, the Governor General's authority to prorogue Parliament is set out in the letters patent constituting the Office of the Governor General of Canada, 1947. It's in Section 6 for those who wish to look it up. Normally, when it is clear the government intends to prorogue, the Governor General is made aware that a formal request from the PM will be forthcoming. PCO seeks formal PM direction of the intended date of prorogation, as well as the date for resummoning the House. And with that PM direction, PCO drafts an instrument of advice and a proclamation for the Governor General's approval. Once approved by Her Excellency, proclamation is published in the Canada Gazette, and that's essentially the process that was followed. Upon prorogation in August, the public service kicked into gear to frame up the speech from the throne, and there was some discussion in the first part of the session on that, which was delivered on September 23rd upon the return of the House after prorogation. This centrally engaged the Priorities and Planning Group at PCO and involved considerable interdepartmental work to identify initiatives and themes, as well as considerable iterative work with the Prime Minister's office. And as the Minister mentioned, there was also a consultation process. The main themes of the speech from the throne, a stronger, more resilient Canada, were the following: protecting Canadians from the COVID-19, as the Minister mentioned, helping Canadians through the pandemic, building back better, a resiliency agenda for the middle class, and the Canada we're fighting for, which had a real kind of social justice, fairness, and equity dimension to it. These themes from the speech from the throne were also prominent in the fall economic statement and also cascaded through to the supplementary mandate letters, which were released on January 15, 2021. As you may know, the mandate letters are the Prime Minister's marching instructions to his ministry and the public service. In these letters, the Prime Minister explicitly addressed the pandemic and reiterated 4 key themes for the government going forward, which will sound very similar to what was in the speech from the throne because it built off of it. Protecting public health, ensuring a strong economic recovery, promoting a cleaner environment, and standing up for fairness and equality. So having laid out briefly how prorogation is initiated and in broad strokes how it impacts the work of the public service, Don and I would be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll begin. Sorry, we're actually under time a little bit. We'll begin with Ms. Vecchio for 6 minutes, please.
Actually, I believe that we can go on to Peter Kent for this. Yeah, Peter should be next, and then I'm after that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sutherland, Mr. Booth, and our best regards to Clerk Shugart as he deals with his health problems. If I could start by asking, did the Privy Council office recommend prorogation, or was the PCO simply told after discussions that prorogation would occur?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Kent. To my knowledge, the Privy Council office was advice was requested of us on the how of prorogation, not the whether to prorogue.
And when you were told of prorogation, did you caution the PMO, the Prime Minister, about the sensitive work being done by committees that would be lost with prorogation?
I think it would have been well understood that having prorogued the House, it would set in train the impacts on the committees, on less on private members' bill, but order questions. And so that full suite of impacts would have been well known.
On what day was the trigger pulled? On what day was the Governor General notified to be prepared to meet the Prime Minister to answer his decision to prorogue?
I'm sorry, Mr. Kent, I can't give you an exact answer, but it's typically the case that it's really quite, it's just before. There's not the months do not pass, nor even weeks. It would have been in the lead up to the 19th, I guess.
So the Governor General was quick to respond and made herself almost immediately available?
She made herself available.
Can you tell us how long the meeting between the Prime Minister and the Governor General lasted?
I cannot.
Because we know that while the point was made, you mentioned that prorogation has never been denied by a Governor General. We do know that in some instances, the Governor General pressed the Prime Minister of the day to justify and to explain, sometimes to the extent of more than an hour's discussion.
That's correct. I know what you're referring to.
Now, could I ask, the Prime Minister made the announcement on August the 18th, only hours after Minister Freeland had been sworn in as the new Finance Minister. Was the Governor General aware at that time that she would be asked to prorogue Parliament those hours later?
I'm trying to remember. So your sequence is, I cannot be certain of that, but I think it's quite likely.
Okay. Now, could you undertake, could the PCO undertake to provide this committee with all of the emails, memos, or documents which may have been circulated between the Privy Council office and the PMO, or passed between the PCO and Rideau Hall about the options or the plans for the prorogation?
If that's the committee's will, yes.
I suspect it will be the committee's will. Thank you, sir. Was the PMO aware that, fully aware, or did you have to inform that in fact prorogation could have occurred even on the day that Parliament was scheduled to resume, September 22nd?
So I don't know that for certain, but it is well known that some governments have had quite a short gap and others have had a much longer gap. The gap that was being proposed in this instance is well within the norms of what we've experienced.
And finally, you referred to a number of highly qualified witnesses that the committee has heard.
Yeah.
And would you agree with the consensus that prorogation is very often, and while it's a perfectly legitimate tool of government, it is very often taken by governments in some political distress or for political reasons?
Well, it's fundamentally a political decision, and it's not unusual for it to occur in a highly charged political context.
Right. The Prime Minister put an awful lot of stock in holding a confidence vote,
right.
And justifying prorogation and the return of Parliament, a new speech from the throne, on confidence. But in fact, his report on prorogation claims the government was duty bound and honor bound to ensure there was continued confidence in the House. Wouldn't you agree that in fact that vote was not necessary? There was an element of political theater to it?
Well, it's been standard since Confederation that when you have prorogation and you have a speech from the throne, the next step is to have a confidence motion. So, I mean, given that well-established precedent, I would say that a confidence motion was inevitable and necessary.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We've got Dr. Duncan for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Mr. Sutherland and Mr. Booth for coming, and please extend our best wishes to Ian Shugart. Protecting the health and safety of Canadians, protecting our economy is paramount during a pandemic. And while this is an important study, I think there are much more pressing issues right now, addressing the variants, protecting Canadians' health and safety and democracy during an election, should one happen, and learning from the response so that the parliamentary precinct, Parliament, and parliamentarians are better prepared for a future pandemic. Pandemics are a matter of if, not when. Of when, not if. And because I have limited amount of time, I will be asking largely yes and no answers. As you know, this committee is concerned with the proceedings of the House and the parliamentary precinct. And while we are clearly in the throes of responding to the pandemic, and our focus must be the response, it will be important for this committee to later review the parliamentary precinct response. So, was there a plan for the parliamentary precinct when the pandemic began? I'm looking for a yes or no, please.
I'm just going to turn to Don. Do you know that, Don?
Not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't really fall into our bailiwick. So there may well have been.
Okay, could we find out if there was a plan? Because if there was a plan, everyone within the precinct should know that. Could the groups, how often, my questions are going to be difficult now. You're not aware if there was a plan for the parliamentary precinct. Is that correct?
No, we're not. It's not our area of expertise.
Okay. Seeing as most of my questions related to that, I will turn this over to my colleague, Stéphane Lasson. Thank you.
Okay. My apologies.
No, not at all. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
Go ahead, Mr. Lasson. You have 3.5 minutes.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland, and thank you, Mr. Booth, for coming as well. You mentioned dates in your opening remarks. I'd like to know if there is any very clear mechanism for deciding dates when prorogation is necessary. You also mentioned a return date. Is there any mechanism, anything that is written out anywhere that sets out how to decide those dates?
it's governed by convention. There are some limits to how long the House can, as I'm sure members know, how long the House can not sit. The limit is 365 days. But in terms of kind of setting the date, it is entirely within the PM's prerogative to determine the dates. I would turn it to my colleague Don Booth, who has additional information on kind of recent dates and prorogation.
So when the proclamation is drafted to prorogue, a pro forma date must also be set at that time. That is established by the Prime Minister. Generally, I mean, traditionally it was 40 days or thereabouts, but that is in the past few decades that is varied. And the pro forma date can be changed. It just requires the issuing of a subsequent proclamation. So, I mean, over the last, say, 3 or 4 decades, it has varied from 14 days in 2002, 32 days in 2007, 63 days in 2009. So it really depends on the circumstances of the day and the decision. It's the PM's decision.
And then perhaps I could ask you another question. I don't want to cut you off, but I don't have much time. When the Conservatives were in government, there were prorogations. We already heard about this today. Was there any difference in how that was announced when Conservatives were in power compared to today?
No, the same basic procedures would have been followed and have been followed since Confederation and indeed before Confederation.
And there used to be an alternate process that was a more formal process in the Senate, but that was discontinued back in the 80s. So now it is just the issuing of a instrument of advice followed by a proclamation.
Donc, peut-être dernière question. My last question, then, if I have time, Madam Chair. Quickly, you mentioned
20 seconds.
Ouais, 20 secondes. 20 seconds? Okay, then very quickly. Do you agree that setting up the throne speech requires a fair bit of time, including the fact that many groups are involved in working on it? So this is actually a fairly long preparation, isn't it?
Yes.
Merci. Thank you.
That was perfect. Thank you. Okay, next we've got Mr. Therrien. 6 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to welcome our 2 witnesses today. Thank you for coming. There are experts who came before us who said that ideally prorogation has to be short in order that Parliament's work not be prevented from happening. Now, in this case, we were in a pandemic. There was work to be done, and there were urgent matters to attend to. Do you agree with what the experts said? That is, that prorogation should be as short as possible.
Well, the practice of prorogation is entirely the PM's prerogative, and so the length of time that was actually undertaken is kind of well within the average. I would note too that in fact only 1 day of House time was lost as proposed.
Okay, well.
I believe Mr. Rodriguez referred to the fact that we were going through extraordinary circumstances. You're saying this was well within the average. I think it should have been as short as possible because that wasn't very efficient. There are even some people who said to us that they could have actually dissolved Parliament in the preceding week. Others said that it could have been on the 18th of September. Is it possible, would have been possible, to have prorogation announced on September 18th and have Parliament come back the following week?
Yes, it would have been.
C'est une réponse qui me...
Well, I'm very satisfied with your answer. Thank you. Now, I think this is the answer to everything I wanted to know. So it was possible. It wasn't done. And they prorogued on August 18th. If they could have prorogued on September 18th, that means that the government could have prepared for that, a government with a vision in any case. They could have prepared for September 18th, allowed committees to continue their work and Parliament to continue their work, and then announce on September 18th they could have prorogued. You're saying that that would have been possible?
It is technically possible. I would tell you, though, that what you would lose is your ability to frame the throne speech in the same way, because it would have been impossible to have the consultations in that way, in my view. And I was project manager for what I think was a pretty good speech from the throne for the Conservative government. So I have some experience in this, and it just would have been challenging to have such a short one. You would have had to probably have kept it within kind of PMO, which wasn't what was done in this case. There was widespread consultation and framing the future directions with public service. So just to make sure I'm understood accurately, it is possible it could have been in one day, and I answered your question honestly and accurately, but there are some advantages to having a month time or so.
OK. Ben, ça me va comme...
Thank you. Thank you very much for answering my question. You clarified your answer, the answer that you gave earlier on. Now, can you tell us when you were informed of the government's desire to prorogue Parliament? Can you tell me that, or do you have no idea?
So I can't tell you to the hour, but I know that we prepared the formal advice on how to do prorogation, and it was, I believe, on the 17th of August.
Le 17 août, c'est le même moment.
On August 17th, so the same day the Minister of Finance resigned, I believed. No? I believe, rather.
I'm sure that's easily checked.
OK.
Thank you. So you have to work with the way to do this. Is that right? You have to sort of provide the steps leading up to prorogation. In that case, you're not actually working on the reasons or what's motivating the government to prorogue. You're just making sure they know how to follow the steps. Am I right?
Follow the steps, make sure it fits with our constitutional traditions. Yes, that's where our focus. It's not on whether to prorogue, it's on how do you do it.
OK.
Thank you. I'd now like to move on to something else. I really did get the answers to my questions. So, Mr. Hugo Cyr, when he appeared, spoke to us about prorogation when there's a minority government. He suggested changing the constitution such that government would have to have approval from the House of Commons. Do you think that would be useful for future prorogations? That is to say that a minority government has to be supported by the House to do this? You don't have to answer, but I thought it was an interesting idea, and I'd like to know what you think of that.
It won't surprise people who know about machinery of government that we are big believers in conventions and the traditions of our system, so we are very reluctant to propose changes of that sort.
Ça va. Merci beaucoup.
Well, then, thank you.
The time you have, it's just 5 seconds.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Next, we've got Mr. Blakey for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering if you think
I'm having trouble hearing.
Oh, am I coming across okay now?
Yes, you're coming across well.
Got to project a little more into the microphone. I'm wondering when it comes to the budget process, for instance. I mean, that's a process that involves a lot of interdepartmental communication. It involves a lot of stakeholder consultation. You think that's a comparable process to what was undertaken for the speech from the throne last September?
It's hard to compare the two, Mr. Blakey. I would say that typically, and this is more drawing on past speeches from the throne, typically the SFT process is more restrictive than recent budget processes, which have had long consultation processes, as well as input from ministers at various times, and you know, the system actually cabinet feeds the budget system, as do some meetings between the prime minister and the minister. So I think the budget process is typically a longer one.
Okay, and so what we've heard very clearly today is that when the government is preparing an important document, like a speech from the throne, which appears to be a less demanding process than the budget process,
yeah,
that the government can't have Parliament sitting and do that at the same time. So if we're about 6 to 8 weeks out from a budget, somewhere in there, would you be advising the Prime Minister at this time to prorogue Parliament so that government
No.
can effectively prepare a budget?
No, I certainly would not be.
Okay. But in the case of a less demanding document, the Prime Minister thought it was appropriate to prorogue Parliament in order to be able to prepare the speech from the throne. I find that passing strange because it seems to me that Parliament is in the habit of effectively sitting even while government prepares budgets year over year. Last year, of course, was an exception, but I don't think it was because Parliament was sitting that the government failed to deliver a budget in the normal time frame. And I think that's worth noting because it seems to me we saw the government House Leader make a lot of the fact that they needed to consult, but in fact, the template is there, both for stakeholder consultation and for interdepartmental communication in order to be able to effectively deliver a massive policy document, even while Parliament sits. So it seems to me, I'm not asking for you to confirm or deny your own personal feelings, but it seems to me that that's not really a sufficient reason for prorogation. And of course, I think this also speaks to a question of timing, because it seems to me that if the counter argument were that, well, it was an attenuated time frame, we suddenly needed to deliver a speech from the throne in 3 to 4 weeks, then I would ask why it was that the intention to have a speech from the throne only came about in August. Was there any doubt at the highest levels of government that Canada would experience a second wave in the fall?
I think that was broadly understood.
Was there any doubt about the expiration of the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit legislation and when that would cease to continue supporting Canadians as it had through the early months of the pandemic?
Yeah, no, I understand where you're headed, Mr. Blakey. I would simply note that in developing a speech from the throne, what the government is choosing to do is to kind of set its vision on the forward plan. And the Prime Minister clearly determined that he wanted to set his forward plan at the start of the fall. There are good reasons to do that. The fall is a natural time of change, and the speech from the throne sets, and I think Minister Rodriguez talked about this, it sets a new page and sets the agenda going forward. I think that, in fact, the speech from the throne did do that, and it has profoundly affected the government's agenda on a go-forward basis. So I would just make that observation.
But it seems to me there's a difference between deciding that you want to launch a new policy direction in the fall and deciding in the fall that you want to launch a new policy direction. And all of the factors that we've heard in terms of there being a pandemic, and well, that's really it. I mean, the fact that there was a pandemic was known in June. The fact that that we may well be facing a second wave in the fall was known in June. The government could have decided much earlier than August 17th that they were interested in having some kind of prorogation in the fall, coming back with a speech from the throne, and without proroguing Parliament, could have undertaken to do the consultative work over a longer period of time than what the Prime Minister left to government to do. And I'm wondering, what changed between any time previous to August 17th and August 17th, such that the Prime Minister decided on a much shorter timetable than was necessary that he wanted to relaunch the entire policy direction of government. Because it seems to me he had the same information in June as he did in August about whether or not the pandemic would call for a shift in policy response. And he could have provided direction earlier to government to begin those consultations and working towards a new speech from the throne in September, and obviated any need, and I stress that because I don't think there was any need in the first place, But certainly a government started earlier, as they do with the budget. They could have undertaken broad-based consultation with civil society, had plentiful interdepartmental communication, and produced perhaps even a better document than they did in fact produce in September, which I submit would not have been a great strain.
Thank you, Mr. Blakey. Next, we've got Mr. Nader for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, thank you to our witnesses. I want to follow up just a little bit, Mr. Sutherland, about the necessity of a confidence vote following a speech from the throne. I don't think anyone's arguing that a confidence vote is required after a speech from the throne, albeit there is some discussion that it's not necessarily happening, but has generally happened. But I just wanted you to confirm that you can still have a confidence vote through other means without actually proroguing Parliament.
That's correct.
Now, I want to follow up a little bit about the discussion with the Governor General. You mentioned that the Governor General made herself available. I noticed you left out the word immediately made herself available, but we won't read too much into that. Could you talk about the dynamics of that conversation? Was it a phone call? Was it an in-person meeting, or was it a Zoom meeting when when prorogation was formally requested?
So I know that they did speak. I'm not precisely sure the form of the, whether it was a conversation over the phone or a meeting. As you know, at the time they lived quite close to one another. So.
Could have been a conversation on the walks around Rideau Hall, but I appreciate that, and I do appreciate that. I noticed you nodded your head not to read too much into the leaving out of the word immediately. So I do appreciate that that clarification. I wouldn't want to erroneously mislead the committee. I appreciate that. From the PCO perspective, often we ask the minister and in terms of public opinion polling. What type of public opinion polling was being done by Privy Council office at the time that prorogation was being requested? So I'm talking about the late August time period.
I'm not the person that works with public opinion polling for PCO. I know that probably by that time they had been doing some COVID-related public opinion polling. You would expect that, but I don't know with precision the answer to your question.
Would that be possible? You could follow up with the committee with that information?
Yes, just so I understand your question, do you mean over the summer of 2020?
Well, just to narrow down, let's say during the month of August of 2020, the types of public opinion polling that PCO was undertaking at that time.
Yes, well, I will do that.
So again, following up on some of the earlier questions, well, you were asked to prepare the information on prorogation on the 17th of August, and of course this was announced publicly. Are you aware of any conversations being held prior to the 17th of August, whether seeking advice or whether having information sought from PCO officials prior to the 17th, or was the 17th of August the first time that PCO officials became aware of that?
So, Mr. Nader, if you could give me a day either way, because it took us some time to develop the advice, so we may have known it on the 16th. But your question, I think, really speaks to were there earlier conversations that kind of spoke more to the weather issue, and I do not believe so. But I would turn briefly to my colleague Don Booth and just see if he has any knowledge of that.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we were engaged, I think, on this, as Alice said, on the 17th to start preparing the proclamation, the appropriate documentation, but not privy to what conversations may have taken place before that.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I the one day either way, give or take, that's neither here nor there. So I do appreciate that. Again, is there anything preventing the Prime Minister or from the government from announcing their intention to prorogue on a certain date, but not formally proroguing until closer to that date? Is there anything that would prevent a government from doing that, and they're just taking consultations and discussions about what ought to be in the speech from the throne? Bless you, Karen. Leading up to that point.
So what you're asking is, could the PM say let's say today on February 16th, I'm going to prorogue I'm going to ask for the Governor General's agreement to prorogue on the 25th of February. Is that your question? I just want to make
Correct.
sure I understand.
Correct. Yes.
There isn't. It's certainly not the practice, right? These things are very closely held. And so I don't know of an instance, Don, do you, where
No, I'm not aware of an instance where that has taken place. As Al has said, you don't want to presume that the Governor General, so you wouldn't announce that we will be proroguing next week. It would basically be couched in terms of, it would be my intention to seek to ask for a prorogation. But no, I mean, in terms of practice, I'm not aware that has actually transpired.
So certainly with the
that's all the time you've got, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next, we have Mr. Fragiscatos, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to see colleagues. As you know, Madam Chair, I'm an associate member of this committee, not a full member. I've been sitting in for a colleague, Mark Gerritsen, over the past few weeks, and very interested in the proceedings of this committee on this issue and other issues. I think that, and since we have a number of other associate members sitting in today from the opposition parties, I'm surprised that they decided to sit in today for this meeting. It's a shock, but for their benefit and for the committee's benefit as a whole, I think putting things into context is helpful. I would refer, Madam Chair, to the meeting of December 10th, where we had a number of academics come and testify at our committee. One was a noted constitutional scholar, Barbara Messamore, who said the following in her opening remarks when she talked about prorogation and her view as to whether or not it was justifiable. The quote is as follows: "There is also a strong case that can be made that the unforeseen eruption of the COVID-19 crisis since the start of the 43rd Parliament provides a rationale for a new session, with a new speech from the throne setting out a fresh legislative program. For this reason, I think prorogation was entirely justifiable." So this is, as I said, a noted constitutional scholar. Professor Messamore is someone that regularly provides media commentary on constitutional issues, specifically issues relating to the Crown and all things to do with the Crown, including prorogation. So I think it's important for us to reflect on that perspective. Mr. Sutherland mentioned a number of other academics that came and testified before this committee recently. They certainly did, but Professor Messamore's perspective counts for a lot. And this is a scholar that has agreed with the government on some occasions and disagreed with the government on some occasions. Someone who's independent and, as I said, highly respected for her work. The other thing that came up in that meeting of December 10th, Madam Chair, again, trying to put things into context, and I do have questions for our witnesses here today, is the fact that the average prorogation period in Canada since 1867 is 151 days. The most recent prorogation lasted from August 18th to September 23rd. So I would ask opposition colleagues to reflect on that. I think that's important. Mr. Sutherland, you mentioned something before about 1 day being lost. Can you just go over that one more time?
Sorry, just could you repeat the question?
You mentioned something in your earlier remarks today about 1 day being lost.
That was just the return of the House. There was 1 day between the 22nd of September and the 23rd. But so in terms of pure House time, there was 1 day lost.
1 day lost, and we are spending a great deal of time examining this issue when I think the government has been pretty clear that the reasons for prorogation were straightforward. That rationale has also been echoed, again, by independent observers. I mentioned Professor Messamore. There are others that have testified to that fact. If I could ask Mr. Sutherland and Mr. Booth, whoever wishes to take the question, can you walk me through again? And there were, you went into this in your opening remarks, but if you could go over again, what's the process like in terms of constructing a throne speech? Not necessarily this throne speech that we just saw a few months back in the context of the pandemic. I will ask you that later on. But tell us more about the general process of coming up with a throne speech, the back and forth PCO. working with departments, working with the Prime Minister's office? How does that all come together? It seems like a bit of a complicated thing. I think it would be good to better understand that.
Well, the truth is that there's no single way to do a speech from the throne. Sometimes they're entirely written by the Prime Minister's office. Other times they're entirely written by the public service. What you start with, though, is you start to frame your kind of main thematics. And then you also try and define some of the signature items that will be the kind of takeaways for Canadians. Because really what you're doing with the good speech from the throne is you're trying to set out for Canadians the future agenda. And you're basically saying to Canadians, here are the things that I want you to judge us by as a government. So that's really the intent of it. One of the interesting things about a speech from the throne is actually the first two paragraphs are written by the Governor General. And then it's the government that takes over. So she or he have their kind of two paragraphs, or maybe it's three paragraphs. It depends on the Governor General. So there is this kind of difference between different parts of the speech from the throne that is kind of interesting.
And I will assume, of course, that COVID-19 made that process much more complicated. Would that be correct?
Fortunately, that's all the time we have. We've got 2.5 minutes for Monsieur Terrien.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez, les recherches sur lesquelles on a travaillé au sujet de la prorogation étaient autour de deux sujets, deux piliers. Soit le motif. Est-ce qu'il y avait motivation à proroger le Parlement? Est-ce qu'on avait besoin de peser sur remettre les compteurs à zéro, autrement dit? Mais ça, vous ne pouvez pas nous aider parce qu'on ne parle pas vraiment de motivation dans le cas qui nous concerne et qui pourrait vous concerner, mais plus dans la prorogation la plus efficace, soit la plus courte possible. Et donc, ma question tantôt allait dans ce sens-là. Mon collègue du Parti libéral a mentionné tantôt et a parlé de moyenne de prorogation. Il faut comprendre que ça ne tient pas la route quand on parle de moyenne de prorogation dans le cas où on a la pire pandémie du siècle. C'est pas moi, c'est Pablo Rodriguez qui l'a dit. La pire crise économique.
Interpretation. Can you hear the interpretation? This is the interpreter speaking.
Okay, I'll just stop the time and perhaps we can have that portion just repeated.
Oui, okay.
Yes, absolutely. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, good. Thank you very much. So there was a reference to an average length of prorogation, but in this case, we can't really speak to averages because this was the worst health crisis. Mr. Rodriguez was right in saying that. He was also right in saying this was the worst economic crisis in a long time. And that is why, in fact, it would have been good to have a very short, efficient prorogation. Now, our witness said that only one day was lost in the House of Commons. However, we did lose 3 days, and also we could have been called to the House at any point in time. If there were any urgent bills, for example, we could have been called back. But committees were also doing their work. But unfortunately for the Liberals, this work was focused on the rather chaotic management of the We Charity affair. So my question for you is this. I just want to make sure that it is possible to hold consultations for prorogation while parliamentary work is ongoing. Am I correct?
The consultations on prorogation or consultations? I'm not sure I understand what a consultation on.
Consultations in preparation for prorogation.
Well, typically, the government doesn't consult on whether it's going to prorogue because the...
Non, mais je veux dire...
I'm sorry, I didn't express myself clearly. What I'm saying is that, as you were saying earlier, there has to be preparation for prorogation, but that can be done while work is ongoing. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, I see. So what you're saying is, can government work occur while the steps for prorogation take place? I just want to make sure, Mr. Terrien, that I understand your question properly.
Vous avez mentionné
earlier, you said that when government is going to prorogue, they will often consult so that they can prepare for the throne speech and for the tabling of the throne speech. So my question was whether that can be done while Parliament work is ongoing. But thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the witnesses for appearing.
Mr. Blakey, 2.5 minutes.
Whether it's in this case or in the case of some previous controversial prorogations, I think part of the idea of this change in the standing orders in the last Parliament was to create a forum for Canadians to get some satisfaction when there's doubts about whether a prorogation was really in the public interest or whether it was in the government's own political interest. And I'm just wondering, I heard earlier, and I'm sure you heard the same, the government House leaders say, well, we're from different parties, we got different takes on it, we'll just have to agree to disagree. I don't think anybody would have found that to be a satisfactory answer in the case of the 2008-2009 prorogation, when Prime Minister Harper prorogued Parliament to avoid a confidence vote. I mean, I think if the result of this exercise is that we just accept that while there's different points of view depending on what your party is, and we don't have anything concrete to say about the circumstances of prorogation and the obvious political effects that they have, that this will be a disappointment. And it seems to me that having the legislature get more involved in decisions about prorogation on the front end and evaluating government's response on the front end would do more to try and mitigate these apparently intractable disputes. I'm just wondering if you have any reflections on that, given your experience in government. Now, I know it is the PCO's job to defend the existing prerogatives of the Queen, but I also know that those prerogatives have changed in different ways over the years. So I'm wondering if you have any reflections for us on how that convention might change in this regard in order to try and avoid these kinds of intractable disputes post-prorogation and have a more constructive process to build consensus around the need for a prorogation.
So perhaps a few thoughts on this. I mean, the mere fact that the committee is studying prorogation as per the changes in the standing orders, I think is novel and represents what over time might be a change to the convention. I would say that, that the convention, though, is so very long-standing, right? It predates Confederation. I mean, for the history wonks among us, it goes back to 1530. So it is a long-established convention. It's a long-established Canadian convention since 1867, and foundational to that convention is that the PM has the prerogative, and it often takes place, almost, I'm willing to say always takes place in a very political context, because it's a political move, so that's never going to change. But I do think that the standing committee's work, or the committee's work, is actually a very interesting way of bringing light and sunshine to the decision. So I thank the committee for their work.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland. We thank you for being here. Ms. Vecchio, you've got 5 minutes, please.
Fantastic, and thank you very much. I really appreciate that. To Mr. Sutherland, are there any other mechanisms? I note here it was actually 3 days that we lost because we lost the sitting days.
My apologies.
It's all good. We lost more than just 1 day. We lost two additional days as well. So there's 3 days in total that we lost from this. But we did lose all the work that was being done in committees. And I recognize a lot of work was being done that was focused on we, and it was very embarrassing for the government. Yet there were other committees that were doing some sensational work. I know the work that we were looking at were women during the pandemic in the FEWO committee. Were there any other mechanisms this government could have used to, say, we're going to reset the agenda, but we know that it's important to continue to do the committee work? Are there any other mechanisms where they could have done that?
Yeah, so I did look at this a little bit in preparation for the committee meeting, and one of the things that I focused on were the government bills that had been in Parliament prior to prorogation. And I would note, with one exception, all of them were reintroduced and are kind of making their way through the system. So I just note that it does appear like and it takes, since it's a minority parliament, it takes goodwill on both sides, but the various bills that were before committee, or before or at second reading have been reintroduced, and the one exception I think is appropriate. It's what was then C3 on. Yeah. But in terms of some of the other stuff, I mean, I think a lot of the things really did. I think the government endeavored to just kind of bring things back to kind of the stage at which they were before PMBs. There's no practical impact.
But on the committee business, right, they have to restart. So
that's absolutely right.
So is there anything with the exception of PROC? So is there any times that that they could say, yes, we're going to here's what we're going to do, but committees, you can go back to business? You have to reset those committees. Basically, it is up to the committee to decide. So if you have government members who do not wish to see the weed charity scandal or anything else to be brought forward, they will continue to filibuster, which we saw in multiple committees. So I just wanted to check if that was thing. I just also want to look at you. You're indicating, and I really appreciate it, it brings the light onto this long-standing convention that we have when it comes to the prorogation by doing this report. I want to ask you, and perhaps you cannot be quite fully open to this, but do you feel that this report that was tabled is 100% accurate, or is there any missing details?
Oh, I'm not in a position to comment on the report. Like it was tabled. It's the government's reasons, and
fair enough. Fair enough. And I just wanted to look at some other indications, because we had talked about some of the consultations that were being done, and the reason that they need to have this. The minister or the House leader had indicated about more consultations and able to amplify all of this. Did you see an incredible increase in consultations after August 18th up to September 23rd on the Day of the Throne speech? Or had these consultations been going throughout the period of time?
No, I think there was an uptick. I work, the reason I'm laughing is I work normally quite close to priorities and planning group. And I know that when prorogation hit them, it was a surprise. It was late August, and they knew that they had to kick into gear really, really quickly. So the nature of their consultations, both the public ones, but also the ones within government, were quite intense. Like I know there was some comment earlier, but it's only a speech. Well, it's a very special speech, and it does take time to put together properly. And I can assure you that things ramped up really, really quickly and we're at multiple levels.
I appreciate that. I know that I've gone through the speech, and actually it's almost, you can take 3/4 of the speech and just say, here's 2019, here's 2020 speech. And the wording may be different, but the change of the COVID, but whether it's the economic or whether it's the environmental, that the 2 billion trees, that is nothing new there. I understand what you're indicating here. Yep, go ahead.
Just on that, I mean, there's always a mix of continuity and change in any speech from the throne. Like, it would be entirely inappropriate if, suddenly black was white and white was black in a speach. So it's not a surprise that there'd be things that would continue on.
Very fair. I just think for many of the members that we see sitting here, and as we've indicated, we all knew that there were essential programs that were helping Canadians each and every day, like the CERB and all of these benefits that were helping businesses. They were all coming to an immediate stop. The government introduced Bill C2, which then became Bill C4, which now we're back and having to do another bill. I think it might be C20, but I still know it hasn't been tabled. But there continues to be these bills that need to be introduced because of the lack of programming or planning on this. And I'm not saying it's that. I'm not saying it's the issues of the bureaucrats, but these are some issues. My last and final question for you is, when we talk about the writing of the speech, and you indicated the first 2 paragraphs are always done by the Governor General, was it the work of the senior bureaucrats or the work of the PMO that finalized the speech?
Maybe Mr. Sutherland will get it in the next few minutes. Mr. Turnbull?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And thanks, Mr. Sutherland and Mr. Booth, for being here. I really appreciate you both. Mr. Sutherland, just a quick question for you. How many years have you been in the federal public service?
Don't ask me my age here.
No, I just wondered how many years of experience you bring to this committee.
Over 30.
Wonderful, thank you. And Mr. Booth, do you want to answer that too?
Approaching 30.
Great, and thank you for your many years of service. Just wanted to ask you, so you've seen a few prorogations in your day, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah. Is the one that's in question here the most controversial that you've seen?
No.
No. Okay. Was it the longest one that you've ever seen?
No.
Okay. Historically speaking, if you looked at many prorogations, are there not always some amount of differing opinions about why they occurred?
I can't be sure on this, but I'm fairly certain to say yes, you're correct.
Okay. And is there anything that stands out as unique about this particular one?
From a convention perspective, nothing at all.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Sutherland, you mentioned widespread consultation, and I'm very interested in this because I know myself, as a member of Parliament in the governing party, that we went through quite an extensive consultation process, and I'm confident that I only saw one fraction of what was actually going on. But could you give us a little bit more detail on how widespread that consultation process leading into the new speech from the throne was?
So what I can speak most to is the consultation that occurred within the public service. So what you would have seen is every government department engaged with chipping in ideas as to the sorts of thematics or signature items that might help give life to the speech from the throne. So that would have kicked in kind of late August, early September. And then what you would have seen was a lot of iteration between PMO and the Privy Council office. On top of that, I think Minister Rodriguez spoke to the kind of public dimension of the consultation that occurred as well.
Great, thank you. Sounds very extensive. You also talked about the new speech of the throne profoundly affecting the government's agenda. And I wonder if you could give us a little more detail on that, like how and where specifically did the agenda shift? Keeping in mind your previous comment, I think, which is a good one, that there's always some degree of continuity and change in any new speech from the throne.
Well, I think some of the areas, and it's hard because the speech from the throne is a governing sort of template. So there are a lot of things in it. So I will almost certainly miss a few things, but I think we really saw with it kind of yes, of course, COVID and the issues around building back better. We saw kind of a commitment to clean energy that I think is quite remarkable. And as well, I think you saw imbued in the speech from the throne and subsequently in the mandate letters, Black Lives Matters and kind of the concern around equity and fairness that had been moving to the fore in really the Canadian agenda in recent months. So I think you can chart its genesis from the speech from the throne, from the mandate letters, and as well the fall economic statement. So, I mean, and as well, of course, and this is where continuity comes in, Indigenous reconciliation. There was some sharpening of that, I think, in the speech from the throne and subsequently in the mandate letters as well. So there too, there's an interesting continuity in kind of the Prime Minister's personal commitment to Indigenous reconciliation was kind of reinforced both in the speech and in the mandate letters.
Thank you for that. And one would think from a common sense perspective that a government that was elected shortly before, who then came into this, 100-year crisis, that, essentially abandoning any commitments that were in a previous platform. Like what I'm trying to get at here is that would seem awfully, it just wouldn't make sense to the general public if the government didn't have some continuity in its new speech from the throne. Wouldn't you say that that's true?
I would agree with that.
Great. So in essence, the new speech from the throne updated the platform commitments, but applied them to the new context, which was the global pandemic.
That's nicely put. Very nicely put.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank
and you also,
maybe we can wrap it up there. Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. And I especially want to thank our witnesses. And yes, please do send our best wishes and regards to Mr. Shugart. We are hoping that he has a very speedy recovery. And I know that all the members, appreciate all the time he spent and the good work that he's done. So we hope to see him back soon.
Us too.
Yeah. And to the regular members, I just wanted to point out a couple of things for our next meeting. I wanted to first of all, mention that I had tried, and there was a notice sent out to schedule a meeting for the completion of the draft report on the election study that we've done. And the timing didn't work for a lot of people, and I know the 1 to 2 timing also doesn't work for some members as well. So we do. I'm finding that there is an hour in Thursday's meeting. We only have 2 witnesses that have confirmed to come, and we would have the second hour free. So with your permission, I was wondering if I could schedule in the consideration of the draft report on the second hour on Thursday. I think all it's going to require hopefully, sometimes we go over what I think, but I'm hoping that we can maybe get it done in 1 hour. That way, in the coming week, we could have that report tabled, and then we can carry on with prorogation next week as well. We might have to have a committee business next Tuesday is what I'm thinking, so that we can make sure that we know what the plan is going forward on prorogation and other things that might be coming. But I'll let you know if I've got other witnesses slotted in for next Tuesday. I'll let you know on Thursday who those might be. Does that sound good? That if I put in consideration of draft report on Thursday for 1 hour? Yep. Okay, perfect. So you will get that notice then. Thank you. Bye. I guess I officially should have said meeting adjourned, but I didn't. Yeah.